Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Conservation Careers podcast. It's Nick here from Conservation Careers, and joining me today are our regular co-hosts on the show. We've got Fernando Mateos-González. Hey Nando, how you doing?
Hey there, how are you doing?
Good, good. We've just been talking pre-show about dressing up as otters, so we'll find out more about that in a second.
Are you sure?
Well, maybe, yeah. And also we have Dr Stephanie Schuttler from the world of fancy scientist. Hey Stephanie, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. And one of these days I won't kind of fumble your name or fancy scientist.
No, you said it fine this time.
I thought it went fancy scientist. I think I kind of.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
I won't even try to do it.
So how are we doing, Nando? We've just been talking beforehand. Like you've had quite a busy fun day. So we normally start with like what's been going on, and I feel like I'd like to hear about your day. Tell us and tell the group what you've been doing today.
So, well, you know that very often I'm tangled up in statistic analysis and all these fancy words and hardcore biology. But today I was using my PhD for something totally different, which was I woke up, I put on an otter costume, a Russian otter, Lutra. So I got dressed as a furry animal and went to meet a local school. And it was like, I don't know, 40 kids, 7-8-year-olds. And we went for a nice walk along the river, just talking about otter conservation. Well, my colleagues were doing most of the talking. I was mostly playing around because I don't speak Czech. And I did taught some Spanish to the kids, and we managed to communicate in the end. But it was a blast. It was super fun, jumping around and mimicking otter behavior, and also trying to avoid fights for too many kids at the time trying to hold my tail. That's always a problem. No, but it was fantastic. I love it every time. But if you see me or hear me a bit slow today, is because I'm destroyed after the fight. It was epic.
47-year-olds, yeah. I feel your pain, yeah. What was their kind of interest in otters? Like, how did the session go down? Were they engaged? Were they mucking around? Are they interested?
There are many special points along the river where there is a sign, a signpost by the river with some information about the otter, and it always works very well when one of my colleagues is pointing at the sign and then pointing at me, and then explaining how the ears are small or how I have many little hairs in my fur that allow me to go underwater and preserve my temperature. And all this, when they can see it directly, they all stay silent for a moment and keep their eyes open in total awe, and then they talk about it. That's always very interesting. This and also the kinds, we were talking about this earlier, the kinds of questions we get sometimes, like many of them are marvelous, very interesting, or how do you know the number of hairs that an otter has, and things like that throws you totally out. And then sometimes you get shocking ones like, which kind of gun do you use to hunt an otter? And this like makes your hair like go, oof, we really need to do some work here. And it tells you it's important. It's maybe they have some external influence at this younger age, and it's very, very good that they get some other point of view, and especially a more conservation related one. Because
and
it can
hunting is hunting
Mm-hmm.
otters quite commonplace in the Czech Republic where you are? Is that
not hunting otters per se, but many there are many hunters, and some of them are not very good hunters. I mean, not hunters at all. I don't know if it was the case of this kid's family, but yeah, there are some poachers in every country, I will guess.
Yeah.
And not so long ago, like last week, we were able to say in public that a lynx we had been tracking for years, a female lynx that was in our camera traps for years. And every year it was a female, and every year she had been able to raise 1 or 2 cubs constantly every year. And then they disappeared. Her most recent cub and herself disappeared from our network of camera traps. And we found out a few months later that a poacher had taken her, like had killed her, and then he was posting in social media, or at least WhatsApp photos with the lynx, and we can recognize that's lynx by the pattern of spots in the fur. And then they found it belonged to this hunter, was part of I don't know, a gang of poachers that were planning horrible things, like bringing tigers and releasing them in forests to hunt them. And they had all these crazy, horrible plans. And they had been tracked by the police for some time. And finally, they found all of these, like lots of hunted lynx and many other species already. It was so there is a lot of work to do, and I think nothing works best than working with kids, because they influence their parents a lot.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
Yeah, they kind of like pester pal when they come home and talk to dad and talk to mom and find out what's going on. And really powerful. Yeah.
Well, shocking.
Yeah.
So it was a good day of work.
But exhausting, right?
A bit exhausting.
Well, welcome back. Thanks for finding time for the podcast as always. Yeah. And Stephanie, how are you doing over there in the States? What's been going on?
I am doing wonderfully. So speaking of animal costumes, every Halloween I dress up as, I started doing this several years ago. I've started dressing up as an animal, or I think it's all been animals. No, one year I dressed up as a camera trap tree. So I had a camera trap on me. So one year I was a plant. But that just remind, because I like to post it to social media with like a little conservation message or science message. So that reminded me I have to think of what I'm going to be this year. I'll have to ponder on that. And I like to be something kind of unconventional too. One year I was a pangolin.
Oh, nice.
One year I was, that one was kind of a disaster. It turned out okay, but I just underestimated how difficult it would be to make a costume like that with all like I cut out all the scales and stuff and taped them, and my costume was definitely falling apart by the end of the night. But yeah, it was fun. So I'll have to think of what I need to do this year for Halloween.
Well, I can't wait.
You can't wait.
I can't wait. Actually, it's now, when we are recording this, is 1 month before Halloween.
The last day of September right now. Last
day. Maybe for the next one we should come.
Oh, and you'll know it. Yeah. Another one I did was a bird of paradise. I forget which species, but that one was really fun. And I was working at the museum then, and we had an event, so I dressed up as and a couple of people knew what I was, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Very nice.
I've only ever dressed up once that I can remember as an animal. We were like I was at a festival with my wife, and it was like dress up night, and we both dressed up as barn owls, but it was like very last minute, and like I just had some like white clothes and some like staples and some face paint, and not a single person knew what the hell I was. I looked so bad. I was so embarrassed. My wife got dressed up too. She looked at me and went, "Oh, you're really good. I want to look like you." And then she looked even worse than me. We looked, oh dear. But yeah, it was fun trying.
It's good. Then you get to explain it.
I'm a barn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody knew what a pangolin was. They were like, "Are you a pine cone?" So then I had to explain. But other than that, I mean, I've pretty much been up to the same thing. I turned 40 this week, so
happy birthday.
Thank you. So I don't know, I've been reflecting on it. Well, actually, that kind of relates to our topic that we're talking about today. Like I just did a podcast on kind of like what I wish I knew back then and what I would have told my younger self. And so things, professionally, things are pretty much the same. And I'm a whole new person now that I'm 40.
On the other side.
Broken through the barrier. Yeah. We're all just that side of it now then. Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good point then to kind of introduce the topic of today, because it links really well, as you say. I mean, the topic that we thought we'd discuss through was about what do we wish we'd known about working in conservation or wildlife or biology or whatever we want to kind of call this sector that we're in, before we started working in it. So if we could like replay the clock, like you're saying, Stephanie, and kind of, you know, start again, what useful piece of information have we now learned that would have helped us, you know, through our career to date. And the reason I sort of suggested this myself was I was asked this recently for a blog. I forget the details of which blog it was for, but they were asking a number of different people, and it really kind of got me thinking. Actually, there are some sort of things I think that sort of stand out as this is different to what I expected, and it's useful to have known this actually as well. So it felt like a kind of good topic for us to kind of land on. Shall I kick things off? Is that why not?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, what was one of the things that you shared?
Yeah, I think I shared 2 or 3 things. One thing that kind of jumped out to me, which I think becomes increasingly true, I think, as you kind of are within the sector, if you like, working in conservation, is that it feels like a really quite a kind of small connected community of individuals. It's quite easy to think conservation's huge, and it is. You know, there's lots of jobs and lots of people working in it, but it almost every time I certainly feel like I meet someone new, there's always someone in common. There's always a connection to someone else, and it feels like the community is actually quite a small number of motivated, often extremely friendly, open, collaborative individuals. And it's easy to think it's a huge movement, and you know, you're sort of like a tiny dot, you know, a tiny cog in a, you know, huge wheel or whatever it might be. Actually, I think every individual makes a difference, because it's amazing how connected we all are. I guess, like, as a bit of an example of that, I can't remember all the details, but a few years ago I was teaching on a master's course at uni about kind of career planning for mid-career conservationists. And these were people, it's a master's in conservation leadership, it's called, and people are drawn from all across the planet. Like, you maybe have 20 students, and they're from 18 different countries, mid-career, 20, 30 somethings, really motivated, often running their own charities and NGOs in country. And they go to Cambridge for a year, they get a year's training, all sorts of different stuff, and they get a few hours with me, and then they all go back again. And I really enjoy it, I love it. And one year I kind of went in, and the lady in front of me, I looked at her and thought, gosh, I think I kind of know you. And she's from the Cook Islands. And way back when I was in the Pacific, I had a trip to the Cooks. They were one of the countries I used to support a little bit. And it turned out that we knew each other from that. We had loads of contacts in common back in the Cooks. And I thought, just what are the chances of this person from the Cooks being in the same place as me now? Here we are several years later. And I went downstairs at coffee time and sort of looked in a meeting room. And in that meeting room was a workshop that's being led by a group of people. And it was a group called Wild Team. And Wild Team are another kind of organization we work really closely with. They do project management training and now fundraising training and other stuff. And those 2 staff there, who both live right down the other end of the country, were both there teaching that day. Really nice to bump into them. And I was walking back up the stairs. There's another guy I used to work with in another form who lived in Mozambique at the time. He's now in Sri Lanka. He travels around a lot, but he just happened to be in the building at that moment at time on that staircase. And you just think, it's just like, this is just a crazy small world we're living in. And those sorts of things are not untypical. You know, I would say they're almost common. I think if you meet someone new, you know, you are quite connected to them, at least through another person, quite quickly. So I guess that makes me reflect a bit that, well, one, I think, like, it's good to be open. It's good to be collaborative. It's good to be nice. Obviously, it goes without saying anyway, but I think when it is a small community, you know, reputation and everything really counts for a lot, I think. So just bearing that in mind, I think, helps a lot as you kind of sort of navigate, you know, the sector. And also, I think just realizing that, I think particularly for like career sort of switchers and people on the outside who who do worry about like imposter syndrome, and do worry about, I think sometimes conservation is sort of held on a little, pedestal, if you like, that sort of seen a bit like elitist, if you like. And actually, I don't think people are like that typically within the movement. I think most people are really open. They're overwhelmingly friendly, and, I would use that to your advantage. So I would actively go out and try and network and talk to people and connect to them, and use that community and that openness for introductions and, and other things that could help to kind of get you going in your career as well. Yeah. So it's kind of smaller than you think. It's probably friendlier and more open than you think, and, what goes around comes around as well, I think, so just, try and make connections and see it as like a big family you can fairly easily connect into. We're not remote, we're not distant. So again, like for me at the beginning of my PhD, I sort of sat down and, figured out what I wanted to do. And then over the next 2, 3, 4 years, then did it. What I should have done in hindsight is actually connected to all the people who are doing similar stuff on barn owl research and other related things, and gone and met them all, or had Zooms or Skypes or whatever it could be, shared my research more with them, try to see if I can help them. And I think I'd have been a much better scientist as a result, and I'd have had more papers and so on and so forth. So I think that sort of lesson plays in loads of different ways through this. But yeah, so I think, that's probably my opener, is it's quite a small open community. I don't know if you guys feel that or sense that too, but I certainly do.
It's pretty similar.
Yeah, going off of what you said. So, I mean, this didn't apply when I was younger because it wasn't really around. But one of the things I wish I knew was like how to do conferences right or better. And like, so, and this applies just like to what you were saying with meeting people is so start a profile on LinkedIn and have a presence. And then when you meet somebody like that day, immediately add them on LinkedIn. Because like you're talking about, it's so connected, or like right after the conference, it's so connected. And I've found that people are so friendly too. So like if you need to reach out to them to ask them questions or whatever, they will be much more receptive to you if they've met you before. And a lot of times people will remember you too. Yeah. And then also like you can see those mutual connections too. So maybe they could introduce you to someone else that you're really interested in working with. So and also with conferences, email people ahead of time to meet with them. Like, I don't know. I just always kind of just like was like, okay, networking is just kind of this like sporadic thing that happens when you're there and you just kind of like bump into people, but control your networking. So like, look who is presenting ahead of time and email them and ask them if you could take them to lunch or meet them during one of the breaks to talk to them. So just do more like active, proactive networking.
That's great advice. I hate conferences personally. It's one of my bugbears. I think it's probably the wrong thing to say, but whenever I've been to them, I always feel a bit overwhelmed. I come away exhausted. I always feel like I didn't make the most of it. Yeah. So I think that's great advice, just working ahead and figuring out who you want to talk to and why, and making it happen while you're there, rather than hoping that fate means you're going to interact in a good way. I don't know.
Haven't you felt that the best part of conferences happens outside the conference, like when you sneak with the group that goes for dinner or escapes in the afternoon part of the talks, and then instead you go for lunch outside with some small group, and then you do the proper networking because you are having fun with a smaller group of people. I like very much that advice, Stephanie, planning ahead and maybe reserving some time and emailing the people. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Perhaps we could have a chat after your talk on the looking at the schedule.
Because a lot of times you'll see a talk that you're interested in, or you're going to see a talk and you're really interested in it, and then afterwards everyone is trying to like hound that person, and then they might have to go off to something else. And then you're kind of like looking for them the rest of the conference. And if you were to email them at the conference, a lot of people don't check their emails or don't check them as regularly, and it might get lost. So if you can be proactive about it, that's something I figured out, I think my like last year of my PhD or maybe my postdoc. And I was like, why didn't anyone tell me this?
That's such good
a super hack if you are really in this situation is if you are in an institution that is organizing the conference, by all means go and get involved in the organizing, because then you get proper access to all the speakers, and then you get time after, before, and then you really get close to them, and then you get invited to all the dinners and all the lunches. That's if you can do it. And if there is no conference at your university, just try and get a bunch of friends and organize some, and invite people and ask for help from the university, but just organize your own university, and then you get all of these advantages.
Or seminars. If you're in graduate school, there's seminar speakers, so get on that committee, and then you have control over who gets invited, so you can invite all the people you're interested in doing postdocs with or PhDs with. And if I don't know if undergrads have this opportunity as much, but I know at least with the Wildlife Society, their chapters usually bring in at least one speaker a year, but usually they have like some sort of like seminar series as well.
That's interesting. And it's like getting involved. I was going to mention it too, actually, because I think it kind of gives you a clear role as well when you're at that seminar or that conference or whatever it be. If you're part of the organizing committee, it means you're not just mingling or networking, which is incredibly valuable, but some people can feel quite lost. I can feel quite lost in that sort of situation. Whereas actually having a role, a duty, whatever that might be, really enables you to kind of make the most of it, puts you into the forefront, and it also is something you can kind of put on your CV as well. It kind of looks really good, like you've done that thing. And
even beyond, it makes your mind go easier, like it puts you in a special frame of mind. I am the organizer, or I am the enabler. I can help, and then you get I don't know, braver. You approach people.
True.
And for conferences, you usually get a discount too. So that's if you can't.
You can get it for free.
I was gonna say it for free, but I know some offer discounts and some do for free. But
that's a real benefit. That's really interesting advice. I wish I'd known some of that too. I'm learning.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. We have, as always, the internet lag.
Go ahead. You can share.
I was going to share what I was thinking about our topic today, and what.
Go ahead, and then I.
What? Okay. Well, when I was thinking about this, I tried to remember what it was like, and I remember when I was an undergrad. Every summer, I used to go and volunteer for conservation organizations, or I don't know, national programs in Spain, and we will go to the field and do crazy nice stuff, like we are going to do a census of all the alpine birds in this mountain range, or I was ringing birds on an island in the Mediterranean, and then I was thinking, this is what I want to do all the time. I just want to go from place to place doing this, and then nothing in between, just this. I will be more than happy. And what I wish I had known then is that it was extremely hard. If I wanted to do something like that, it will be extremely hard. First of all, economically, because there is a field season. And if you open your search worldwide and you get very well connected and you do everything else very well, you might have a slight chance to jump around a little bit. But to do that, you will need so many specialties in different animals, in different fauna, in different geography. It's almost impossible to do only that. And I remember I started searching for this because I was adamant. I really wanted to do something like this. And I started searching for friends or people to talk about it. Is someone else doing this? And it was really, really hard to find people that was doing something even remotely similar. And I did find a blog that is no longer active, or is not even online. I don't know if there are alternatives, but the one I found was it was called like the seasonal field biologist or something like that. And he was describing exactly this, how hard it is. Like he was jumping from state to state in the US, and then sometimes trying to go to another country, and he couldn't earn enough money to survive. And that was something that scared me so much. So then I realized two things. One is that more than likely that you have to do several things, and hence you need several different abilities. And the second thing that is better, I'm glad I found out this second thing, is that it doesn't matter, because you will get to like other things, and then you will combine this. I no longer want to do only this jumping from fieldwork to fieldwork. I want to do more things. And it's fantastic to find out that what you like will change and will allow you to do many things at the time.
It's really nice.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have students come to me and they say like they want to be a research technician, and it's extremely hard to find permanent jobs like that. Usually, like you said, they're seasonal, or if they are year round, usually they're contract for like, a year or two. And yeah, I don't think people realize it that and then also, like you said, piecing them together, that gets also exhausting, like constantly applying for jobs and moving. And when you're young, it's great. And it's fun and stuff, but I've talked to people who've done it for years and years and they love it, but those pieces get tiring, and like applying, and like you mentioned, the money issue as well.
Yeah, and then juggling a family, uprooting them from time to time.
Yeah,
that's really hard.
Of everyone I know, I think, Nando, you're the closest to that ideal, actually. You seem to get out quite a lot to do some really interesting work and surveys, but it's because you're entirely proactive and you make things happen, and you're open to things.
It's important to say, exactly, it's important to say that I get to do those things because I do the other things. Like I wouldn't be able to collect data if I wasn't able later to analyze that data. Probably I wouldn't have that chance. So yeah, I still love it, of course, and I try as hard as I can to do many different projects, but I realize now that only doing that is impossible. You have to, well, not impossible, but I encourage everyone to try and get more skills and try and test other paths, because you can mix and match later, and it's more sustainable for your life.
Yeah. And I think within science, what you've both said is really true. Like those jobs are available, but they're very seasonal, short term. You bounce around quite a lot. It's very unpredictable. But outside of science, the closest I've seen would be like ecological consultancy, whereby your job is to go and do surveys for protected species or protected sites or something of interest within kind of, ecological law, if you like, because the development's happening and, we need to know what's there in order to protect, conserve, mitigate, whatever you want to call it. And so there are people whose job it is as consultants that are often largely out in the field, through the kind of survey season, which can start sort of in the UK in like March time, I guess, and then run right through till maybe even September, where you kind of have newts and voles and badgers and barn owls, and the survey calendar kind of stretches quite wide, and then you get the winter period where it's a little bit quieter, and you need that time as well, just for like business planning, project planning, and all that sort of stuff. So there are kind of aspects, there are careers out there where you can be out in the site a lot. And there are people who just do the survey work as well, who are just really good at ID and they like that side of stuff. And other people do the analysis, the reports back in the office, kind of a different level, like a management level. Or there's some people that just do both. You go out, do the survey, you come back, you do the report, talk to the client, get the next piece of work, and so on and so forth. You're sort of involved in the whole piece. So they're kind of flexible options within that. But actually that links quite nicely to my other piece of advice I was thinking around with the theme as well, about what I wish I'd known beforehand, it links really well actually, which is I think within the conservation industry, like there are more office-based jobs than you might realize. I think most people do what we're doing right now and are sitting behind a computer largely, whether that's writing reports or writing emails or doing Zooms or analyzing data or whatever it might be. I would say that the overwhelming majority of kind of conservation jobs are largely kind of desk-based, sort of day-to-day. I'm not saying those jobs out in the field don't exist, they do, and there's lots of them, and lots of jobs have aspects of that. And often jobs will start field-based, and as you mature in your career, you maybe become more desk-based, and you don't like that for whatever reason. But that's certainly I think is a trend. I think when you think conservationists, you see someone on the beach or in the jungle or in the sea or whatever it might be, and actually a lot of people are fundraisers and communicators or project managers or whatever it might be. The movement's big, and a lot of it is what we're doing, now sat behind computers. Yeah. And that suits some people, it doesn't suit others. So I think just being aware of that is useful. And, and as I say, if you really, really want to be outdoor doing stuff, those jobs exist, but you need to have that in mind and plan for that quite carefully to kind of connect to that. But you might be someone who doesn't want to be outside, and that might be a breath of fresh air, thinking, there's loads of office typey jobs that I could do in conservation. Yeah, there's loads of them. So if you're happy in this sort of environment in a desk, inside, then there's plenty of work for you as well.
Yeah, I interviewed Christina Lynn for my podcast. She has a really successful wildlife YouTube channel. I think she has now she probably has over 250,000 subscribers or maybe not that much, but whatever. She has a lot of subscribers, tens of thousands at least. I can't remember, but she was saying exactly what you said. So she started off 100% in the field. And then as her career progressed, now she's only 10% in the field and, 90% behind a desk. And I think you're right. There are those field careers out there, but just something to consider is you might not be able to move up if you are not willing to go behind a desk. And same thing with the museum world and zoo world. Things become more managerial as you move up. If you were to look at an executive director position, or even at the museum I worked at, the director of research and collections, so much of that is managing people or planning for the vision of the museum. And it's not really doing science anymore, even though he was a scientist, he had a PhD, he had research, and he didn't do that anymore. So, just understanding how careers change too. But kind of going off of what you said, my big thing that I wish I knew is that you can work in conservation in so many different ways. And I always had this very narrow sliver of what conservation looks like. Like you mentioned, you're on a beach measuring sea turtles, or you're, in a forest doing surveys. And you could do, this didn't exist when I was starting my career, but you could do social media type stuff, communication type stuff, and, or just work for a conservation organization. Or you could even say you're really good at finances. You could do that and work for a big organization. Or you mentioned, fundraising is huge. I didn't realize how big I know that sounds so silly, fundraising is, but you can, train to be a really great fundraiser and work for a nonprofit. And just because you're not the one out in the forest, out in the ocean, doesn't mean you're not having a big impact. If you can get a lot of money to pay those researchers or to pay rangers on the ground or whatever needs to be done, that's a huge impact on conservation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I worked in fundraising for a few years, and it's teamwork, fundraising. I was the person, working with the conservationists who was telling me what they need to do, what the problems were, they're going to solve them. And my job was to try and put that into a package that a donor would understand and find appealing and want to fund. But I know that when that funding occurred and when the guys got the money and they could, and that action could happen, I felt like I played an important part in that whole process and can feel connected to it. Whereas when I was working communications and marketing, I knew that I was having an impact, but I didn't quite know what that impact was when my story got into a newspaper or or whatever it might be. It's like, well, it's good. I feel good about that, but it's very sort of intangible, to know exactly what difference that made. So I think fundraising is one of the places where you do genuinely feel connected to what you did.
Yeah. Or even working outside of the traditional sources as well. Like, I mean, we think of nonprofits a lot, but I know a lot of conservationists view large corporations as evil, and they obviously do a lot of bad things to the environment. But if you're working for Walmart or Amazon on their sustainability, you're one of the good guys, you might be able to push it to be more environmentally friendly and sustainable than someone else.
That's a ton of leverage. If you manage to move
exactly. And you could have a bigger impact on wildlife indirectly by affecting climate change, and it's not necessarily selling out. So I think just having like a broader, and I think also like scientists and conservationists need to welcome that as well. Like I said, like the selling out thing, I think they tend to like view that as a negative, but you can have a huge impact if you're able to change the sustainability measures for Amazon. I mean, that would be huge.
Yep.
Yeah. Working from the inside. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't name names because they're like, well, sort of friends and family, but I know people who've gone off into careers and earned like lots of money in the city, put it that way, as opposed to people like me who kind of stayed within the conservation movement. And you often reflect and think, well, gosh, one way to have an impact in this world is to go off and earn lots of money in the city.
Yes.
And then retire young and early, and then put that money and your time and your expertise to good use. That's another. Yes. And at the end of your career, you could reflect back and say, well, who had the most impact on the world? And
exactly.
I'd say that, all bets are off, really. That's another route for doing it. And that links actually to another piece of whether it's advice or reflection, like, is that the industry nowadays does actually draw a lot from the private sector into conservation, if you like. So lots of charities, particularly I'm thinking in communications and marketing and fundraising too, they want the best of the best. If there's someone out there working in the corporate sector doing great marketing, great communications, that they're really good at fundraising, whatever it might be, they're often way better than what's currently in the sector. They are the best across all markets. And so bringing in, if you want to apply your skills to good within the conservation movement, there are often jobs available to you, and organizations are very happy to kind of hear from you. So again, that kind of imposter syndrome from the outside isn't always true. There's some jobs are very readily sort of transferred across, and you can come in and make a really big movement. I'm thinking like in terms of like our friend at our end called Lloyd Gofton, who is our course guide for our communications course that we run, and he's been working in PR and marketing for 20 years and has a real passion for conservation, and now transferring all his skills into doing it for conservation organizations. And you just see, well, I did it for 2 or 3 years, and I learned more in a week from him than I did in 2 or 3 years doing the job. He's just so good, and
wow.
And people like that can make such a difference in this movement. So, and communications, talking about it a lot today, but David Attenborough said, conservation is now a communications challenge. Like, we know what we need to do. Yeah, we just need to get more people to support us. And the way to do that is through communications and messaging and marketing and PR and whatever you want to call it. It's that kind of public outreach stuff that we need to be better at. And the way to do that is get the pros in, basically, and help us out.
Yeah. Or like going back to the otter costume.
Yeah, there you go.
reaching the kids. So because adults can be very hard to reach. So reaching them when they're young, and then they grow up and they're like, I remember that otter that visited our school. Yeah. I'm gonna, donate to this organization.
That Spanish otters.
Or and it extends just beyond the species to usually them caring about the environment and issues like that as well. But I love what you said though about ambassadors. Yes. And also, like you mentioned too, that the parents learn better from their kids than they do from us. They're more likely to listen to their kids and just like make changes for their kids too. But
Absolutely.
I loved what you said about money too. And actually in my book, my last chapter is all about that. If like you realize this career is not for you, or, I mean, to be honest, most jobs in this field don't pay that well. Or if you, I don't know, like really love something else, but you'd want to do conservation stuff, that's another thing you can do. Have a lucrative job, make a lot of money, and you can also fulfill like your conservation bug by doing like Earthwatch expeditions to different countries, and you get to do real research. Like I was talking to this one scientist, and he's very prominent. He works at a very prominent institution here in the US. And like we were talking about the places we want to travel to. And one of the places he mentioned was a place that he does research in. And I was like, come on, you've surely been there. He's like, yeah, but I'm only in conference rooms, or like, you know, in the Capitol. And
curious.
Yeah. And he's like, whereas his friends, they're like posting all these pictures of like going to waterfalls and beaches and like doing all this stuff. So yeah, like you can have a quote unquote regular career, and then do your vacations to have some good, or retire early, or just donate a lot of money and have impact that way.
Yeah, and the good news is that it's not always easy, but you can switch from one to another if you feel like to, and at any time, and you end up doing lots of different ones in a career. I think that's like how has your feeling changed? Like my feeling looking back at my career and at many of my colleagues is that we all start wanting to do things directly with our hands or with our work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get more and more like our passion or focus or an aim, a mission seeping in, and then we look from farther away, and then we see all these options, like I could fulfill this mission if I went this way instead. It's like with age or with connections and experience, we gain more leverage and find better ways to fulfill the mission. Whereas at the beginning, we want to feel the experience. We want to be there on the beach walking and tagging turtles.
Yeah.
And this affects a lot how much time we want to be inside, outside, and behind the desk.
Yeah. Well, and also like for me, I was always driven by outcomes. Like I wanted to have an impact on conservation, and I thought the science would be like the best way. But even if you do the science, it doesn't mean it reaches the right people. So you need those roles on the ground to meet with government officials or do the educational programs or outreach, because the science is only one piece of it. You can do all the science in the world, but if nobody is reading it or cares about it, and they're doing what they want anyway, then it's kind of like, well, why do the science? I'm not saying that science is not important by any means, but I'm just saying if you want to have an impact, and you do it in this like, you know, vacuum, then you won't have that impact. You need those other roles as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just reflecting on your question too, Nando, like, you know, how things have changed. I think, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I got into conservation because I'm really passionate about wildlife. I just want to say that I think it's really important. I mean, I guess that's what most people think and feel. And there was certainly an urgency there that drove me into it too, you know, rate of decline or whatever it might be, climate change, you know, all sorts of issues kind of eating away at that. But what I've found, I think, through my career is that I've tried to sort of like emotionally distance myself from the urgency, because it's just too much to bear day to day. Otherwise, like I have a good close friend of mine, like gets really quite down, you know, like emotionally down, towards depressed. I wouldn't perhaps use that word, but you know, he's certainly, he really feels it and he senses it. I always remember my dad when I was a kid saying, you know, like be concerned about something, but don't be worried, because like concern is like an, you know, it's an emotional state of being as opposed to like an intellectual state of being. See what I mean? And there's a subtle difference, and I try and sort of draw the line. I think I've gone from worried to concerned in terms of how I compartmentalize it. It means I can go home at the end of the day and I'm not awake at night worrying about these things. I know that, you know, I'm part of a picture. We're doing our best. There's bad stuff going on. There's good stuff going on. We need to stay optimistic. We need to keep moving forward. So I think that I've still got the passion, but like the fire and the anger and the worry has ebbed away as I've tried to. You can't live like that, can you?
I totally agree with that. And I think actually that's a big problem with communication as well, is that we tend to carry on this sadness and this worry about the planet. And I'm definitely concerned, like you mentioned, concerned about the planet. But I have separated myself emotionally from it. Or at least more, I've distanced myself more, because if you're constantly feeling that, your work is probably going to be worse, but then you're also not going to inspire people to want to do conservation. Nobody wants to be around a wet blanket talking about how the world is ending. So I strongly believe, and I've really worked on myself to focus on the positive and make it an exciting and fun movement, so that people are excited to be a part of conservation and really want to change things.
Yeah, and and I feel the same. And sort of like, do what you can have an impact on, and don't worry about the rest. I think it's like Stoicism. I think is the philosophy. It's like just only worry about the things you can control, and everything else be aware of it, but don't let it get on top of you. So that's something.
There is a word, no? Now a thing. It's a thing. This eco anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't think it's dangerous.
We have to lower the level a bit and be able to work with it, not to get crippled by this eco anxiety.
It's a bit like nerves, exactly. Like nerves, say, like public speaking or something like that. You know, they can cripple you. They can stop you from doing stuff and hold you back. And that's maybe what eco anxiety can do as well to an individual. Or you can use them as like excitement and like flick the other switch and see it as this is helping me, and use it to focus and to be happy. You know, nerves and excitement are the same thing, but one's negative, one's positive. You just choose which way you want to go with it. Yeah.
Right, because the situation is not going to change because you're sad about it or anxious about it. Everything is going to happen regardless. So again, don't turn a blind eye and act like everything is wonderful. But being down and being upset is not going to make things better. And like you said, it's going to cripple you, because I've been there. I've gone through that, and it's you're not your best self, and you don't do your best work. So it's kind of like when the advice they give to parents, or the airplane analogy. You want to put your mask on first before you put the mask on your child, because if you're deprived of oxygen, then you're not going to be able to put the mask on the child. So you have to take care of yourself.
That's it.
Yes,
that's so important. Well, we're rapidly getting towards our hour, actually. I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else you guys want me to share around this topic, or shall we?
I think we could go for hours, but
yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I've really enjoyed the chat. Well, I'm interested, Stephanie. You mentioned at the top that you just recorded a podcast about reflecting on your birthday, turning 40, and what advice you'd give your younger self. Is there anything within that you'd like to share? Or
I'm trying to remember what I said now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a big one is just the outlook on life, that there's these cultural norms about things have to be a certain way, like even age, like, oh, you're over the hill, and like, you know, things start going down. And yes, your body does age and stuff like that. But to be honest, I'm in better shape now than I was in high school, because I work out and stuff. And I take care of myself better in terms of my health. So just not falling into those common beliefs and actively working on dismantling beliefs out there. And yeah, we're like really working on a mindset so that you can bring this like great energy to other people as well. And when you're around somebody who's like really charismatic or really, or like a public speaking, who's really excited about what they're talking about, or like a great teacher, that energy shifts to you and you get excited about it. So I've learned to train myself to do that by working on those negative thoughts. And you first start paying attention to them, and then you actually start writing them down. And I have a whole process where I go through and like, you know, seeing, is this true or not? And really debunking it, and then replacing it with more positive thoughts.
That's great advice.
That's probably the biggest thing.
Is that, and that process you have, is that something you've learned or something we can even point people towards? It sounds really valuable.
Yeah, it's something I've learned. I don't think I have it out there yet for like on a blog post or anything. I've talked a little bit about it, but not the whole process. And it takes work too. Like I'm still working. I still have beliefs that like I thought I dismantled, but now they're coming back up again.
It's part of the process.
It's all your mind. It's all your subconscious training. But it works really well for imposter syndrome and those confidence and issues that people have.
Nice.
You just remind me with this process of writing it down. I try to write a bit every evening or every morning, and to see how things are going and to plan a bit. And recently I wrote something. I don't know if I said it anywhere, but I wrote something like, you have become someone that your 10-year-old self will be proud of.
Oh, that's so nice.
And then I realized in that moment, if I could imagine when I was 10 years old that I will be traveling and doing this and doing that, and I will be so excited and looking forward to that age to arrive. And so I think it's a good like aim to have daily. What can I do today to become someone so my 10-year-old self will be proud of me now? And I think it helps me a lot.
That's great.
I love that.
In the winter months, I find it a bit harder to be positive. I think I miss the light. It's typical for a lot of people, right? And often around this time of year, as light shifts and the clocks change and it suddenly gets much darker in the evenings much quicker, I do these journals called the 5-minute journal. And it does what you're both suggesting a little bit of, really good. Like the beginning of the day, you write down things you're looking forward to and like real positive, almost affirmation stuff. At the end of the day, you reflect on what went really well today and how you're going to make tomorrow even better. And it's just got a few little prompts. It takes 5 minutes, like 2 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes before bed, you know, and it's done. And it's just like, it really frames the day nicely, and it kind of puts the day to bed as well. And it helps tomorrow to be that little bit better. And yeah, it sounds like we're all kind of in a similar headspace. Well, we're all 40, that's why, right?
Well, I know the entrepreneurial podcast that I listen to really helped me. And I know you listen to some of those. I'm not sure about you, Nando, but that really inspired me to change my mind and started triggering that.
Yeah,
I like
likewise. Yeah. For me, it's Pat Flynn, James Wedmore, is it? I remember. And yeah. Exactly. Yeah, there's some great people out there. Yeah. Well, guys, I don't want to use any more time than either of you guys. I know you're both super busy. And also, I feel like we've spent a whole hour sharing advice. And we normally wrap up with our advice, and we have to quickly think what we're going to share. And I'm going to make life easy today and say, I think we've offered so much advice today. Maybe we don't need to do an extra piece. I think there's something in there for everyone. So thanks as always. I've had a really good chat. Stephanie, if people wanted to like find out a bit more about you, where should we send them?
Just go to fancyscientist.com.
Job done. Nice and easy. And Nando?
Just follow me Bioblogía.
Okay, great. I thought you were stopping just follow me, and I can imagine like people creeping.
I always get stuck there.
Bioblogía. Brilliant. Okay. Well, till next time, guys. Thanks as always for your time. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. If you did, then please do hit the subscribe button. to get notified of new episodes as they drop. And also please give us a rating or a review, because it really helps us to get in front of more people. Now, if you want our help to get clear and get started and get hired as a professional conservationist, I recommend you enroll in our free online training program, exploring how to get a conservation job. So if you're a student, a job seeker, or a career switcher, you'll learn the golden rule about how to get started, the key mistakes to avoid, and also we'll answer your biggest questions. You can check that out at conservation-careers.com/free. See you soon.